Cole had spent 10 whole years away from the place he once called home, and he never imagined that returning would feel so strange. The long dirt road to his cabin was the same one he used to ride on horseback every morning, yet it somehow looked older, quieter, and more forgotten. Tall grass brushed against his boots as he walked, and every step stirred memories he thought he had tucked away forever. The air smelled of pine and dry earth, a scent he once loved but now felt almost unfamiliar, like meeting an old friend after many years. He had come back for peace. After losing both his parents within the last year and selling the small apartment he had been living in, he wanted silence again. Life in the city had been loud and crowded. He missed the sound of the wind, the open sky, and the kind of freedom that only came with wide land. His cabin had been empty for a decade, but he knew it would still be standing. He had built it strong with his own hands when he was in his 20s. He assumed dust would cover everything, maybe a few broken boards, maybe a window or two that needed fixing. Nothing more. But as he reached the edge of the small clearing where his cabin stood, Cole slowed down. Something felt off. He couldn't explain it right away, only a strange tightening in his chest, a quiet voice in his mind telling him to be careful. He took a few more steps and stopped completely. His cabin wasn't the calm, abandoned home he had expected. The front door was slightly open. Cole frowned and took a step closer. The wood around the door frame had deep scratches in it, fresh enough that the color beneath the old stains still showed. He knelt down, passing his hand over them. They weren't claw marks from an animal. They looked like someone had tried to pry the door open with something metal, or maybe someone had pushed too hard again and again. Either way, it wasn't normal. He took a slow breath and pushed the door with 2 fingers. It swung inward with a soft creak. Inside, thin lines of sunlight streamed through the dusty windows, lighting up floating particles in the air. A thick layer of dust covered the floor, the table, and the shelves, everywhere except one corner of the main room. There, near the small bed he had left behind years ago, the dust was disturbed. Not just footprints, drag marks. The wood was wiped clean in odd shapes, like something had been pulled or moved many times. Cole stepped inside carefully, listening. He expected silence, but he was shocked to hear the gentle sound of something tapping. He froze. It wasn't loud, but it was definitely there, like a loose board shifting or something swinging lightly. He looked around the room, trying to spot the source. It took him a few seconds to realize it was coming from the back of the cabin. He walked toward the sound slowly, his boots making soft thuds on the wooden floor. The back window had a curtain still hanging, and it moved, even though there was no breeze. That was what had been tapping. The curtain rod was loose, shaking gently as if someone had brushed past it not long ago. Cole felt the heaviness in his chest again. Someone had been inside. He checked the pantry next. When he had left 10 years ago, he had locked it. He remembered putting the key on a nail near the stove. The nail was bare now. The pantry door was wide open, and a few cans from the newer supplies he had left during his last visit were missing. It was strange, only certain things were gone. Not all the food. Not anything heavier. Only small cans that could easily fit into someone's pocket. He closed the pantry door again but left it unlocked. He wanted to look around before making any decisions. As he stepped into the bedroom, he saw something that made his heart beat even faster. The bed sheets had been moved, not just stirred by wind or time someone had lain there. The blanket had been pulled toward the center, and a pillow rested in a shallow dent, as if someone small had rested their head there many nights in a row. Cole felt a mix of concern and confusion. Whoever it was hadn't done any real damage. They had just lived here. Quietly, secretly, probably scared. He walked outside to examine the ground around the porch. The soil was soft enough that footprints still showed. There were 2 kinds. His own, big and wide, and another set small ones. Very small. The kind a young teenager or a skinny child might leave. They led from the porch, around the cabin, and toward the old woodshed behind the house. Cole followed the trail slowly. He didn't want to scare anyone if they were still close. The sun filtered through the trees, and the air grew cooler as he approached the shed. It had always been a simple building where he stored tools and extra hay. Now, the door sat slightly open. He placed a hand on the door and gently pushed it open. Inside, the faint smell of earth mixed with old blankets. His eyes adjusted to the dim light, and his heart sank at the sight before him. Someone had been living there for a while. His old horse blankets were neatly spread in a corner like a makeshift bed. A metal cup sat beside it, filled halfway with water. Next to that lay a few small stones arranged in a loose circle, like a tiny wall or maybe just something someone made to pass time. It didn't look like the work of an adult. It looked like something a frightened child might do to feel safe. Cole stepped in and saw more details. There was a worn-out backpack with a torn zipper, a pair of old socks folded carefully, and on the wooden wall behind the makeshift bed were scratch marks, not violent ones, but signs that someone had tried to climb up or brace themselves, maybe during a moment of fear. The marks were uneven and shaky. Cole tried to imagine who it could be. Why would a child or a young person hide in his abandoned cabin? Why would they choose a remote place in the mountains when there were safer spots in town? The thought that they might have been homeless crossed his mind. But something about the careful arrangement of things, the quiet survival, the hiding, it all felt different, more urgent, more desperate. He walked back toward the cabin, his mind full of possibilities. Inside the main room again, he noticed something he had missed earlier. On the inside of the front door, carved lightly into the wood with something sharp, were words. The carving was uneven, trembling, as if the person had been shaking while writing. Cole stepped closer to read it. "Please don't let him find me." He stared at the message for a long time, his breath caught in his throat. The sentence was simple, but the fear behind it felt real. This wasn't just someone passing by or looking for shelter. Someone had been hiding. Someone afraid of being found. Someone who trusted his empty cabin more than the world outside. He slowly backed away from the door, looking around the room again with new eyes. The quiet corner free of dust, the footprints, the missing cans, the makeshift bed, the scratches. All of it made sense now. But the biggest question remained. Where was the person now? Cole walked outside again and looked at the soft earth around the cabin. New footprints led away from the house. Not the small ones he had seen earlier. These were larger, heavier, made by someone wearing boots. They headed into the forest behind the cabin. Cole felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Whoever the girl or child was hiding from had been here too. Not long ago. He stood there for a long moment, staring at the forest edge, feeling the weight of a situation he didn't fully understand. He had come back for peace. Instead, he had walked into someone else's fear, someone else's struggle. But one thing was clear to him now. Whoever had stayed here had been alone, scared, and trying to survive. And Cole knew he couldn't just ignore that. Not now. Not after reading that message. Cole stood still for a long time outside his old cabin, trying to understand what had happened while he was away. The cold message carved into the wood kept replaying in his mind. Someone had trusted his forgotten home enough to hide there, and someone else, likely the person they feared, had walked on his land, searching for them. This thought alone made him feel uneasy. He was not a man who frightened easily, but the idea of danger so close, without him even knowing, shook him inside. He followed the larger footprints a few steps into the forest, but he stopped when he realized he had no idea how recent they were. The ground was too soft, and the tracks could have been made earlier that morning, or even the night before. Either way, going deeper without a plan didn't feel safe. He needed to understand everything that had happened here before taking action. He walked back to the porch and sat down slowly. The wood creaked beneath him. reminding him how long it had been since he last sat here. He used to drink his coffee every sunrise in this exact spot. He remembered how peaceful those mornings were. But now, the silence felt heavy instead of comforting. The cabin was no longer just an old home. It had been a shelter for someone running for their life. Cole looked at the forest line again and thought about the person who had stayed here. The small footprints, the carefully arranged stones, the missing food, the makeshift bed, it all pointed to someone young. Someone scared. Someone who had been alone for days, weeks, maybe months. And the message carved on the door showed trust, but also fear. Whoever wrote it believed the cabin was safer than the outside world. Cole's heart tightened as he imagined what kind of fear drove someone to scratch a message like that. He stood up again, unable to just sit still. He needed answers. He walked around the cabin slowly, searching the ground for more clues. Behind the house, under one of the windows, he found more small footprints. They led to a tree stump, and then disappeared. It looked like the person had climbed up to peek inside the cabin before entering. That meant they had been careful, cautious, making sure no one else was inside. He stepped back and stared at the cabin. To someone scared, it probably looked abandoned and safe, a perfect hiding place. That thought made him feel both sad and determined. Whoever the person was, they must have felt completely alone. Cole returned to the woodshed to look again. He knelt beside the makeshift bed and touched the blankets. They were cold, but not dusty. That meant someone had used them recently. He also noticed a small piece of torn fabric caught on a nail near the wall. It was light blue, maybe part of a shirt or dress. He carefully pulled it off and held it between his fingers. The cloth was thin and soft, the kind used in simple clothing. There was no blood or anything harmful, just fabric. But he imagined it must have torn when the person had moved too quickly or tried to hide. He placed the fabric gently on the blanket pile, not wanting to disturb anything too much. Then, his eyes landed on something new, something he had missed earlier. In the far corner of the shed, under a wooden board, was a small paper. He bent down and slowly lifted the board. A folded note lay beneath it. Cole hesitated a moment, wondering if it was right to open it. But considering the message on his cabin door, this note might explain something important. He carefully unfolded it. The handwriting was small and uneven, as if written by someone very young or someone trembling. The note said only 2 words, "I'm sorry." Cole stared at it for several seconds. Sorry for what? Sorry for hiding? Sorry for using his things? Sorry for something else? The note didn't explain anything, but the sadness behind those 2 words felt heavy, almost heartbreaking. Whatever that young person had gone through had clearly made them feel guilty for simply trying to survive. He folded the paper again and stored it in his pocket. It was small, but it meant something. It proved the person wasn't trying to steal or harm him. They were simply trying to stay alive. Cole stepped outside the shed and looked toward the forest again. The larger footprints still bothered him. They led away from the cabin. But did they come back later? Did the person chasing the young one know about the shed? Did they get inside? Were they still nearby? He needed to be sure. He walked around the cabin again, slower this time, examining every tree, every patch of dirt. After several minutes, he found something he hadn't noticed earlier. A broken branch on a pine tree about knee-high. It looked like someone had stepped on it. The angle of the break showed that it hadn't happened naturally. Beside it was a partial footprint. Large, deep, made by a boot. It faced toward the cabin. It was clear now. Whoever belonged to the large footprints had come close. Very close. Cole felt a chill run down his back. If he had arrived only a day earlier or later, he might have crossed paths with this unknown person. And he didn't like the idea of someone dangerous walking freely around his land. He walked inside the cabin again to calm his thoughts. He stood in the middle of the room and looked around, slowly. His old home felt different now. Not just dusty and abandoned, but filled with someone else's story. Someone who had eaten his food, slept in his bed, written messages in fear, and hidden in his shed. Someone who didn't trust anywhere else. Cole sat on the edge of his old bed and tried to piece together everything. The small footprints suggested a teenager or a young girl. The careful arrangement of the bed in the shed and the simple note showed a gentle nature. The message on the door suggested deep fear, and the large boot prints suggested someone dangerous had been searching. But how long ago? And where were both of them now? He didn't have answers yet. But he knew he couldn't ignore what he had seen. He stood up and walked toward the front door. The carved message stared at him again, the uneven letters cutting into the wood. He reached out and touched the words with his fingertips. The grooves were deep enough that carving them must have taken time. Whoever wrote it had been desperate. They had wanted someone, anyone, to understand their fear. Cole understood. He stepped outside and looked at the sky. The sun was lowering, slowly dipping behind the tall pines. Evening wasn't far off. He had no intention of sleeping in the cabin without knowing more. He needed to check the area before darkness made things harder. He grabbed an old lantern from inside and began walking toward the nearby creek. He remembered his old routine. Anyone passing through the area would stop at the creek for water. If the young person had been staying here, they probably went there too, and if the person chasing them had followed, there might be more tracks near the water. The creek was only a 5-minute walk from the cabin. The sound of running water grew louder as he approached. When he reached the bank, he saw slight impressions in the mud. Small footprints. They matched the ones near the cabin. He followed them a few steps along the water's edge. Then he saw another set of footprints. Larger ones. Deeper. Following closely behind. Cole's heart tightened. The young person had not been imagining danger. Someone had clearly been following them. The footprints stopped suddenly near a group of stones. Cole bent down and examined the area carefully. The small tracks seemed to scatter in different directions, as if the person had panicked and run. The larger tracks continued only a little farther before turning back toward the forest. It looked like the chaser had either lost sight of the young person or turned around for another reason. Cole tried to read the scene in his mind. The young one must have been drinking water or washing something when they heard or saw the larger person. They must have run, hiding quickly, leaving confused tracks behind. The larger person must have searched a bit and then given up or paused. Whatever happened, the young person had escaped for the moment. Cole straightened up and looked around. The forest was quiet now, but the memory of that chase felt fresh. He had returned home hoping for peace, but instead, he found himself in the middle of a mystery involving fear, survival, and danger. As he walked back to the cabin, he made a silent promise. If the young person ever came back, or if he ever found them, he would make sure they felt safe. No one deserved to live in fear like that. And whoever had been searching for them had no right to step onto his land with such intentions. Cole reached the cabin just as the last sunlight was fading. He stood on the porch, listening to the quiet forest. He didn't know where the young person was now, but he felt sure of one thing. They were still out there, and the story was far from over. Night settled over the cabin faster than Cole expected. The dark sky pressed down on the forest, the trees standing tall like silent guards. Cole lit an old lantern and kept it on the small table near the window. He didn't want complete darkness. Not tonight. Not after everything he had discovered. The strange footprints, the messages, the makeshift bed, the signs of someone being chased, all of it made the night feel heavier than usual. He sat on the old wooden chair and looked at the carved message on the door again. Please, don't let him find me. The words seemed even more painful with the lantern's warm glow touching them. Cole wondered what the young person must have felt while carving those words: fear, hurry, helplessness. He imagined shaky hands pressing a small piece of metal against the wood, glancing at the window again and again, listening for footsteps. His heart tightened at the thought. He stood up, unable to sit any longer. The cabin walls felt too close, too quiet. He walked outside onto the porch, letting the cool night air calm him. The forest was still, but not silent. Owls called in the distance, and branches rustled softly with the wind. Cole listened closely, trying to pick out any unnatural sound: footsteps, breaking twigs, breathing, but all he heard were the usual night noises. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that the forest wasn't empty. He took a slow walk around the cabin, lantern in hand. The light cast long shadows on the ground, making every fallen branch and rock look like something more. He followed the larger footprints again, only as far as the tree line. The tracks disappeared once the forest floor got harder. But Cole didn't need to go deeper. He just wanted to confirm they didn't come back toward the cabin. Thankfully, he saw no sign of a return. But the knowledge didn't bring him peace. It only meant someone dangerous could still be out there, watching from a distance. Cole went back inside and closed the door gently. He sat on the edge of his old bed and tried to think clearly. If the young person had been hiding here, there had to be a reason they chose this cabin. It was isolated, forgotten, and off the main trails. But that didn't explain how they knew about it in the first place. Cole wondered if maybe they had wandered through the forest and found it by chance. Or maybe someone else had told them about an abandoned cabin in the mountains. As he thought, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the small note he had found in the shed. "I'm sorry." He unfolded it again, staring at the simple message. It didn't explain much, but it made him feel responsible somehow. Whoever wrote it trusted his property to keep them safe. They used his blankets, his food, his shed. They didn't break anything. They didn't steal anything more than a few cans. They simply needed shelter. Cole felt a growing need to help them, wherever they were. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft sound outside. It wasn't loud, just a tiny crack, like a twig snapping. Cole froze, his breath held. Was it an animal? Or someone watching? He stood up quietly and took the lantern with him, moving toward the window. He didn't see anything at first. The forest looked normal, dark, and shadowed. But then he noticed something, a faint shape near the edge of the trees. Small, low to the ground. Still. Cole narrowed his eyes, focusing. The shape didn't move. He wasn't sure if it was a stump, a shadow, or something else. He didn't want to rush outside blindly. Instead, he turned off the lantern so he wouldn't be visible from outside. Darkness filled the cabin, but his eyes adjusted slowly. He stood there, staring through the window, waiting. After nearly a full minute, the shape moved slightly. It shifted to the left, then froze again. Cole relaxed just a little. The movement wasn't threatening. It was careful, small, hesitant. He stepped softly toward the door and opened it without making sound. The cold air hit him once again. He walked to the porch edge and spoke in a calm, steady voice. "I know someone's there," he said softly. "You're not in trouble. I'm not here to hurt you." The forest remained silent. "You've stayed here before," Cole continued in the same gentle tone. "I saw the blankets, the food, the message on the door. I'm not angry. I just want to help." There was another small rustle. Cole waited patiently. "You don't have to come closer," he added. "But please know, you're safe on this land. No one will harm you here." Another few seconds passed. Then Cole saw something small move from behind a tree. The figure was tiny, almost like a shadow. It took a slow step forward, then stopped. Cole felt his heart beat faster, but not from fear. A small voice broke the silence. Is he gone? Cole's chest tightened. The voice was soft, almost too quiet to hear, and full of fear. It sounded like a teenage girl, maybe 13 or 14. He's not here, Cole replied gently. I haven't seen anyone around except you. The shadow stepped forward again. Just enough that the lantern light from inside touched the outline of a thin figure. He couldn't see her face clearly, but he could tell she was young, small, and scared. She wore a loose, dirty shirt and had tangled hair falling around her shoulders. She kept her distance, still ready to run. I'm sorry, she whispered. I shouldn't have stayed in your cabin. I didn't know where else to go. You don't need to apologize, Cole said softly. I'm glad you found a place to rest. You did nothing wrong. She looked toward the forest nervously. He comes at night sometimes. I heard him earlier. I thought maybe he followed me again. Cole scanned the trees quickly, but saw nothing. You're safe now, he reassured her. Come up to the porch. You don't have to come inside if you don't want to. She hesitated, then slowly took a few more steps toward him. When she reached the bottom of the steps, Cole finally saw her clearly in the lantern's glow. She was thin, her clothes worn out, her cheeks hollow. She looked like she had been running for a long time. Her eyes were wide with exhaustion and fear. What's your name? Cole asked softly. She hesitated again. Lila. That's a nice name, he said carefully. How long have you been hiding here? Lila. Her voice shook. I don't know. A while. You wrote that message on my door, didn't you? She nodded slowly. I thought, if someone came back, maybe they would hear me. Maybe they would help. Ah. Cole felt a painful twist in his heart. You did the right thing. She glanced over her shoulder again. You won't let him find me, right? Cole stepped down one stair, lowering himself to eye level with her, but keeping a gentle distance. Not while I'm here. No one will hurt you on my land. Lila's shoulders relaxed slightly, though her eyes stayed alert. He followed me for a long time, she said, her voice trembling. I kept running, but he always found me. Cole didn't ask details. He didn't need to know everything right now. He only knew she needed safety. You don't have to run anymore, he assured her. Lila looked up at him, her eyes shining with tears she tried to hide. Can I stay here for a little? Of course, Cole answered without hesitation. You can stay as long as you need. She nodded slowly, wiping her face with the back of her hand. Cole didn't rush her. He let her breathe, let her stand there until she felt a little steadier. The night didn't feel so cold anymore. Something had changed. Someone had trusted him again just as she had trusted his old cabin. But deep inside, Cole knew this was only the beginning. The danger wasn't gone. The larger footprints proved someone had been searching for her. And if that person was still out there, he wouldn't simply give up. Lila finally took one small step up onto the porch, and Cole silently promised himself, no matter what happened next, he would protect her. Cole stood beside Lila on the porch, letting her take her time. She looked tired, cold, and scared. But now that she was near the cabin, she seemed a little calmer. Her shoulders were no longer pulled up tight with fear, and her breathing had slowed. The night air was cool, but there was a kind of quiet safety around the porch, as if the cabin itself protected both of them. You must be hungry, Cole said softly. She hesitated, then nodded. A little. He stepped aside, giving her room to enter the cabin if she wanted, but he didn't pressure her. She glanced inside, then back at the trees again. For a moment, it looked like she might run back into the forest, but then she took a small, careful step forward, following him inside. The warm glow of the lantern made the room feel softer, less empty. Cole moved slowly, keeping his movements gentle so she wouldn't feel scared. He opened the pantry and grabbed one of the cans that were still left beans. Simple food, but warm and comforting. He heated it on the small stove, while Lila stood near the door, her eyes darting around the room, as if checking every shadow. "You can sit if you want," Cole said, pointing to the old chair he'd used earlier. She shook her head. "I'll stand." He didn't push her. Trust was earned slowly. When the food was ready, he handed her the bowl and a spoon. She accepted it carefully, almost shyly, and began eating. Cole pretended to busy himself with cleaning the table, so she wouldn't feel watched. She ate fast at first, then slowed down, as if worried she should save some for later. "You can eat as much as you need," Cole said gently. "There's more." Lila nodded but didn't say anything. When she finally finished, she set the bowl on the table and stepped back. Cole could tell she was getting a little more comfortable, but she still kept glancing toward the door. "You're safe here," he said again. "I promise." She took a shaky breath. "He was here yesterday." Cole felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "You saw him?" She nodded. "I heard him first. His boots. His breathing. He stopped near the shed. I hid under the floorboard space behind it." She paused and swallowed. "I didn't move for hours." Cole listened carefully, calm but alert. "Did he see you?" "No," she whispered. "But he came close. Very close." Cole's mind raced with quiet thoughts. Whoever the man was, he had tracked her far. She had survived only through fear, instinct, and hiding. And now she had come back to the only place she believed could protect her, his cabin. He didn't ask her for details about who the man was or why he was following her. That could come later. Right now she needed stability, safety, rest. "You can sleep in here tonight," Cole said softly. "I'll stay awake. Nothing will happen." Lila looked at him, unsure at first. "You don't have to stay awake," she whispered. "I know," Cole replied. "But I want to. And I'll feel better knowing you're not alone." She looked down at her hands, then nodded slowly. Cole arranged fresh blankets on the bed. Lila approached it cautiously, checking the windows, the corners, the cracks in the cabin walls. When she finally sat, her posture softened, as if her body finally understood it was allowed to rest. She lay down slowly, clutching the blanket edge like it was a lifeline. "Sleep," Cole said softly from across the room. "I'm right here." It took a long time, but eventually her breathing grew steady. She had fallen asleep lightly, but safely. Cole sat by the window with his lantern turned low. From time to time, he scanned the forest edge. The shadows remained still. Hours passed. The night stretched on. Quiet, but tense. Every owl call, every rustle, every shifting branch kept Cole alert. Around midnight, he heard something faint. A footstep. Not an animal. Not the wind. A real step. Cole stood instantly, silent and still. He held the lantern low, so its light wouldn't reach the window. Another footstep sounded from the direction of the tree line. Heavy, slow. He listened carefully. Then a voice drifted through the air, distant but real. "Lila." Cole froze. It was a deep voice, rough, calling her name in a way that made the hairs on his neck rise. The voice wasn't angry. It was searching, demanding, controlling, and too familiar. Lila stirred in her sleep, mumbling, "No, no," but didn't fully wake. Cole stepped away from the window. Whoever that man was, he was getting closer. And this time, Lila was not alone or helpless. Cole went outside quietly, closing the door behind him without a sound. He walked backward along the porch shadow, making sure the lantern's glow didn't reveal him. He stood at the corner of the cabin, listening. The footsteps were closer now. Branches snapped. The heavy breathing of a man moved between the trees. "Lila, come out," the voice called again. "I know you're here." Cole's jaw tightened. The man stepped out from the trees, only a dark figure in the moonlight, but clearly strong, tall, and determined. He scanned the cabin area. Cole spoke firmly, not shouting but loud enough. "She's not coming out." The man jerked in surprise and turned toward him. "Who are you?" Cole didn't move. "The owner of this land, and the owner of that cabin." The man paused, eyes narrowing. "Then you know she came here." Cole didn't answer the question directly. "Why are you looking for a young girl at this hour?" The man stepped forward. "That's none of your business." Cole stayed calm, steady as a rock. "It is now." The stranger took another step, but Cole raised a hand. "Stop right there." Something in Cole's tone, firm, grounded, unshaken, made the man hesitate. "You hiding her?" Cole shook his head slowly. "She's not hiding from me." The man's face twisted into something dark. "She belongs with me." Cole kept his voice controlled. "She belongs somewhere safe." The man took a step closer, but before he could say another word, a beam of light cut through the trees behind him. Another one followed, and another. Sheriff truck headlights. The man spun around. Cole exhaled quietly. Earlier, before Lila fell asleep, he had slipped outside with his old radio and contacted the sheriff he knew from years ago, explaining only that a missing girl had come to his cabin and that a dangerous man was nearby. The sheriff had taken him seriously. Now the officers arrived in full search mode. "Sir, step away from the cabin," one officer shouted. The man hesitated only a second before running. But the officers were faster. They cut him off from both sides. Within moments, he was cornered, surrounded, forced onto his knees. The sheriff stepped forward, shining his flashlight into the man's face. "We've been looking for you for years." The man didn't answer. He only glared toward the cabin. Cole kept his distance, watching silently. The sheriff turned to him. "Cole, you all right?" Cole nodded. "Lila is inside." The sheriff's expression softened. "We'll take care of her." Lila woke up to the sound of voices outside. As Cole stepped inside, she sat up quickly, fear rising in her eyes. "It's okay," Cole said gently. "They caught him. You're safe now." Her eyes filled with tears, not from fear this time, but from relief. She stood slowly and walked toward the door. When she saw the lights outside, the officers, the man being taken away, she covered her mouth, sinking into Cole's side without thinking. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You're safe." She nodded against him, trembling but relieved. The sheriff approached the porch. "Lila, you don't have to run anymore. We'll take you somewhere safe. Somewhere he can't reach." She looked up at Cole first, silently asking if she should go. Cole smiled softly. "It's okay." Lila nodded slowly. "Thank you for coming back," she whispered. Cole felt something warm settle in his chest. "I'm glad I did." She stepped off the porch with the sheriff's support, glancing back at Cole once before getting into the warm truck. Cole watched until the lights disappeared down the road. The forest was quiet again. Peaceful, honest. Cole stepped back inside his cabin and looked around. It felt different now, not just a forgotten home, but a place where someone had been saved. A place where fear had ended and hope had begun. He touched the carved message on the door once more, not with sadness this time, but with understanding. He whispered to himself, "You're safe now, kid." And for the first time since returning, Cole felt truly at home.